page 26, page 27, page 28, page 29, page 30, page 31, page 32, page 33, page 34, page 39, page 40, page 41, page 42, page 43, page 44, 48, page 49, page 50, page 51, page 52, page 53, page 54, page 55, page 56, page 57, page 58, page 59, page 60, page 61, page 62, page 63, page 64, page 65.
I represent the people of Gombe South. 2021, we adopted. I so move, sir.
Tuesday, 22nd June 2021, I so second.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, those against say nay, the ayes have it. The votes and proceedings of Tuesday, 22nd June 2021 is hereby approved.
President, distinguished colleagues, as usual, my name remains Senator Yoaki Elore, representing Ondo Central. Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and in order to officially place the petition in the body of petition received Albert Institute, Kaduna State, and University of YC since 2016. 2. Pius Peters, Mansour, and 4 others against Mr. Jubri Hassan, FCDA, and of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. Number 3, A.H. Adolfo arrest, harassment of Nigeria. Number 4, Comrade Yusuf Mustafa against the Management and Governing Council of Justice by the Management and Governing Council of the Nigeria Investment Abdul Salami. The best of my knowledge, action. I so move, Mr. President.
Is any of them seeking? Senator Chukwuka Utazi, Enugu North.
I represent the good pay officers in my district. President, the Vincent Kowun.
The petition, please. Deputy Chief Whip, Senator.
I represent Niger North. Laws of the Federation, whenever a matter of privilege arises, to speak upon a matter of prior to the Committee on Ethics and Privileges. Yesterday, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Abuja experienced rainfall. Listening to the reportage from port yesterday, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, 3 things were reported which were very, very inaccurate. That there was heavy downpour or leakage even in the chamber. And also it was reported that begin. So that was the sum of 37 billion for rehabilitation of the complex. This is nothing further than the level of dilapidation. Of course, approached Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, to report this matter. And we all knew, we were all briefed, that Mr. President was willing, ready to ensure that something is done about it. At the end of the day, like we all know, when the sum of 37 billion was made as provision in the initial 20, now so that they can take the rehabilitation across the complex. This is a vindication of what the leadership and indeed the Senate and members of the House of Representatives. And we believe as responsible, we have a duty to report back to the concerned authority. In this case, the FCDA or the FCTA, or if you follow what was being, they will just tell you last year, done to denigrate our integrity and to actually impugn on whatever it is that we stand for. I felt by that reportage, my privilege was breached, and I believe the privilege of my colleagues were breached. That is the point of my privilege.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Whip. Distinguished to a reporter here may not be responsible for that. Our reporters are in tune with what we do here and what happens around us. And they are very patriotic, very genuine, very committed to democracy. And therefore, the correspondent, let me seek the truth before you compile and send your any confirmation and vindication. I found it necessary to go around this complex, and we found out dilapidation and degradation. In fact, anyone who sees what we have here knows that this place is overdue for rehabilitation. It's even worse downstairs. So we went to see Mr. President 20 years and not rehabilitated at all. And Mr. President was gracious. The management, the technical side of this National Assembly, and some contractors, maybe Julius Vega and others, to come up with what we need to rehabilitate here and the costing. In fact, to Mr. President, Mr. President immediately called the late chief of staff of blessed memory, Mala Bakiari. He said, go and look for money to rehabilitate the National Assembly complex, Zainab Ahmed complex. And for emphasis, it was not a National Assembly budget. Some deliberate citizens of Nigeria, we are not holding our democracy with the respect that it deserves. It doesn't have to be us here. It could be anybody, but this symbol must be supported by citizens. And we expect the press to take a lead in informing the public properly and appropriately. So with this, our house is the house of Nigerians, not the house of members of the National Assembly. National Assembly members can sit anywhere designated as their chambers. It doesn't have to be this place. Rehabilitated so that whoever the members of the National Assembly are will have an appropriate and decent place to connect Ekwaramadu.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleagues. I come under Order 43, personal explanation. Married, sir.
Yeah, you married.
By the Dodgers of the Senate and the leave of the President of the Senate, a senator may make a personal explanation, although no question before the Senate or no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor may debate arise upon the explanation. 26, arising from a shooting incident that the sweat of citizens attached to special protection unit said policeman has reportedly been arrested by the police and taken into custody. Also note to the toll gate of the Sambakwe International Cargo Airport in Owerri, in the presence of his wife, Mrs. Ijoma Onachukwu. At this point, there is no arrest. Reports of misuse of such incident to the peace and security of the Southeast region in particular and nation in general. Therefore, call on this Senate to resolve 1, to totally condemn these killings, 2, to direct the Senate Committee on Air Force and police while future occurrences is prevented. And finally, to direct the Inspector General of Police, the service chiefs, and heads of other armed security agencies to immediately commence regular assessment of the state of mind of their personnel, as well as training them on relations with the civil population. I so move.
Thank you very much, distinguished. Let me have the our standing that lost their loved ones and the issue of taking place and happening across the country. We should continue to support our security agencies and armed forces. They are doing their best. And what we need to see wherever they are in that role. We should also give them the kind of support that they need for them to perform better and optimally. And we are going to have an improved situation by the grace of God. The fact that we have a request for a supplementary budget of over 700 billion from the executive to arm our security agencies and armed forces gives credence to the position of government that we are in a situation that is not normal. We are challenged, but the situation and the challenges are not insurmountable. Once again, I commiserate with you, our distinguished former Deputy President of the Senate, and all those families that appropriate actions will hear if they are not heard already, and they will do so. The Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the first business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Umar Tanko Almakura on Explosives Act, Cap E33, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004, Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2021. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title.
LFN 2004, Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2021, SB 749, first reading.
2021 SB 749, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the second business of the day is the representation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Ibrahim Hassan Hadeja on the National Sesame and Hibiscus Development Establishment Bill 2021. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, National Sesame and Hibiscus Development Establishment.
President, my highly respected and distinguished 2021. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal College of Agriculture Abiyaja Establishment Bill 2021, SB 751, first reading.
Federal College of Agriculture Obiaja Establishment Bill 2021 SB 751, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fourth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of the Establishment Bill 2021. Mr. President, you may wish to
Ijebu Ibo Establishment Bill 2021, SB 752, first reading.
Federal College of Forestry Ijebu Igbo Establishment Bill 2021 SB 752, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fifth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Patrick Abamoro on the Federal University of Health Sciences Otupo Teaching Hospital Establishment Bill 2021. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal University of Health Sciences Otupo Teaching Hospital Establishment Bill 2021, SB 753, first reading.
Federal University of Health Sciences Otupo.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee on Tertiary Education and TED Fund on the Federal College of Education Goza Establishment Bill 2021. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was referred to the committee on Tuesday, 4th May 2021. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Ahmed Babaketa, chairman of the committee, to move a motion for the consideration of the presentation and consideration of the report.
It's not around. Oh, okay.
Senator Professor Asandi Eno.
Distinguished Senator Professor Asandi Ono.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Sandy Ono, Cross River Central. I rise most respectfully to move that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Tertiary Institutions and TED Fund on the Federal College of Education, GWOZA, Establishment Bill 2021 SB 342. I so move, Mr. President.
With the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of our committee on TED Fund and tertiary education, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Chairman, you may lead the report, please.
Distinguished colleagues, I would like to proceed straight to the findings. From the views expressed by the stakeholders at the public hearing and subsequent analysis of both oral and written presentations of memoranda, the committee hereby makes the following findings. 1, the establishment of the Federal College of Education goes access to education among diverse demographics in the country and closing the gap in knowledge and generational loss experienced as a result of the turmoil experienced by the region. Written submissions at the public hearing unanimously subscribed to the content of the draft bill, while noting that the establishment, training and providing instruction and higher educational institutions, Borno South Senatorial District, relevant to the developmental needs of the education sector in Nigeria. Recommendations. The Senate Committee on Tertiary Institutions and TED Fund, having carefully considered the bill, hereby recommends as follows: that the Senate do consider and pass the bill for an act to provide for the establishment of the Federal College of Education, GWOZA, Borno State. And in conclusion, I wish to use this opportunity that the Senate pass this bill. I so move, Mr. President.
Consider this report. I so move for class consideration.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate resolves into committee of the whole to consider the report, say aye. And the provisions. Those in favor that clauses 1, 2, and 3 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 4 stand part of the bill, say aye. The ayes have it. And clause 12, those in favor that those clauses stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. And clause 16, resignation. Clause 17, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 19, clause 20, and clause 21, general funds of the college. Those in favor that clauses 9, clauses 22, 23, and 24. Those in favor that those clauses stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. And clause 28, say nay. The ayes have it. Those who are that the interpretation stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor that the short title, statutory memorandum, stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, I rise to move a motion for the chair to report progress. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to second the motion as moved.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate reverse to plenary for the chair to report progress, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. The Senate, in the Committee of the Whole, considered the report of the Committee on Tertiary Institutions and Third Fund on the Federal College of Education, GOZA, but 1 to 26 as recommended. Is this a true reflection?
I rise to move a motion that this bill be read the third time.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion that the bill be read the third time.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that this bill be now read the third time, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of the Federal College of Education.
A bill for an act to provide for the establishment of the Federal College of Education, GOZA, Borno State, and for other matters connected there with 2021 third reading taken, and the bill is passed. Congratulations, Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, University of Medicine, Medical Science, distinguished senators, will recall that the bill was referred to the committee on Tuesday, 18th February. Senator Oluregbe Ibrahim, who is attending on official functions, the chairman of the committee moved the motion for the presentation and consideration of this report. Sadiq Umar.
Leader, I think Sadiq is attending another function. So if there is no one, you can stand it down, please. No, he has returned. Distinguished Senator Sadiq Umar.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I am Sadiq Suleiman Umar. I represent the good and decent people of Kwara North, and we all are. Mr. President, I rise to move the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of head committees, secondary and tertiary. I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Federal University of Medical Sciences, Abeokuta, Ogun State. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion, the ayes have it. You may read the report, please. Chairman, you may present the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, at its sitting on Thursday, 18 February 2020, read for the second time the bill for an act to establish the Federal University of Medicine of Medicine. This bill, sponsored by Senator Bikunle Amosu, seeks to establish a Federal University of Medicine and Medical Sciences in Abeokuta, Ogun State, for the purposes of advancing learning and higher education in the field for the award of diplomas, first degrees, postgraduate research, and higher degrees. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, the public hearing was held. Stakeholders came, expressed their opinions. Federal University of Medicine, education in the field of medicine and medical sciences, when established. The university will attract people to Abeokuta Ogun State, through the provision of higher educational academy, promote and emphasize in-service training, connects research relevant to training of manpower and health technology, among others. Recommendation. After a clause-by-clause consideration of the bill, which is made up of 28 clauses, a long title, short title, 2 schedules, and an explanatory memorandum of committee, the committee 3 to 8, 9, 1 to 5, 10, 12 to 15, 16, 1, 17 to 20, 26, 2, deleted clauses, 16, new insertion, clause 11. Mr. President, the committee would like to thank the Senate President in this capacity. Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues.
Thank you. Colleagues, I rise to a motion for the Senate to resolve in the Committee of the Whole to consider this report. I so move.
Minority Leader. That this Senate resolves into Committee of the Whole to consider. This is also a standard bill establishing a federal university, and it has 30 clauses. Clause 4, that clauses 4, 5, and 6 stand part of the bill. Say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 7, composition of the council. Clause 8 and clause 9, functions of the Senate. Those in favor that those. The chamber is a bit noisy. Clause 10, clause 11, against any, the ayes have it. Clause 15. Those in favor that those clauses stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against any, the ayes have it. Clause 16, removal of certain members of council on page 27. Clause 7. Those in favor that clauses 16, 17, and 18 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Clause 19, clause 20, and clause 21. Those in favor that clauses 19, 20, and 21 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Clause 22 on page 34. Clause 23 and clause 24. Those in favor that clauses 5, appointment of committees, etc. Clause 26 and clause 27. Those in favor that those clauses stand part of it, and clause 30. Those in favor that clauses 28, 29, and 30 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Those in favor that the interpretation stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Those in favor that the short title stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Those in favor that the schedules 1 to 2 stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Those in favor that the explanatory memorandum stands part. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly
Mr. Chairman, I rise to second the motion that the Senate revert to plenary to report progress by the chair.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Secondary and tertiary on the Federal University of Medicine and Medical Sciences, Abeokuta, Ogun State Establishment Bill 2021, and approved as follows. Long title as recommended, clauses 1 to 28 as recommended, interpretation as recommended, short title as recommended, schedules as recommended, explanatory.
Mr. President.
Minority Leader. Against any, the ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the Federal University of Medicine and Medical Sciences, Abeokuta, Ogun State, and for matters connected therewith, 2021, SB 409.
Connected there with 2021 30.
My highly respected the Auditor General for the Federation on the accounts of the Federation for the year ended 31st December 2015. Tuesday, 8 June, the motion for the Senate to receive and consider the report of this committee.
Distinguished Senator Matthew Orogide.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, my very distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Matthew Urogide. I represent Edo South Central District, Edo State. Mr. President, I rise to move that the Senate do consider parts 1 and 2. I so move.
Aye. Those against say nay.
My very distinguished colleagues, once again, I'm Senator Matthew Urogide. I represent the South Central District Chairman Senate Committee on Public Accounts. The report of the Committee of Public Accounts Committee of the Senate, December 2015. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues will recall that the President, you will recall too that the indulgence of the Senate smaller brief that we have.
So you start with the part 2. That is the part 2 report. The smaller one. Okay. Carry on. Okay. Go ahead.
To 3rd June 2020, and examine the part 2 report of the Auditor General for the Federation.
The entire report like this. Okay.
Who were mentioned in the report. We analyzed the responses that were so received. We issued invitation, Department of Petroleum offer clarification on queries and certified by the Office of the Auditor General for the Federation, who acted as prosecutor during committee hearings. The public hearing, in the exercise of its statutory mandate and oversight responsibility, the committee set up rules of engagement to guide MDAs appearing before it. The guidelines served as code of conduct during the committee proceedings. They included 1, all MDAs appearing for committee hearing must be represented by the accounting officers and below the rank of a director to represent him. The accounting officers and other relevant officers, persons attending committee hearing, subscribe to oath of witness before he or she was granted the audience before the committee. And then, of course, resource materials, legal instruments were used. In the course of the consultation of the General's report, the committee observed and noted issues that warrant urgent parliamentary and executive attention to enable our audit process attain its goals and also operate in accordance with the African Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions, AFROSAI, and International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions, INTOSAI, benchmarks. The observations include but not limited to 1, consistent contravention of relevant constitutional provisions. Consistent contravention of relevant constitutional provisions and all extant laws by the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. This includes late submission of annual financial statements. This practice is a violation of provisions of Section 49, subsections 1. Withdrawals of funds by executive arm from special funds account for purposes other than the objectives the funds were created and without recourse to the National Assembly for authorization. Such were contrary to Section 80, subsection 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended. Absence of collaboration among the 2 key agencies involved in the management and superintending of our public funds, that is the Office of the Auditor General and the Office of the Accountant General. Such attitude of interagency lack of cooperation constitutes a barrier to efficient, effective, economic and transparent audit process of the Nation Federation account. And accordingly, gives room for negative, late or non-submission of some financial practices by some principal, the submission of financial state transcripts by the Accountant General of the Federation to the Auditor General for the Federation. The committee views this as a conscious effort at undermining the office of the Auditor General for the Federation and by extension, the Supreme Law, for the proper and conclusive and also urgent need to pass the federal audit bill. Now we go to the presentations as presented. That is on the report, paragraph 5.15. Irregularities in investments and other cash assets. 1,121,180,992.109.07 kobo. The summary of the query is this. It was observed that the federal government of Nigeria had additional investments in the sum of 46 billion 377,522 naira, that is 46.377 billion, and total disposal of investment of 134.3 billion as at the year ended 2015. The share certificates to authenticate the genuineness of the original investment of 46.3 billion were not produced for audit. Also, there was no written authority for the disposal of the sum of 134 billion. There were no additional investments in the power sector during the year under review, as against 547.8 billion being opening balance of the Federation was required by the share certificates of all the additional investments for the verification. The response of the agency. The Accountant General of the Federation stated that the investment of 10 billion and 16.8 billion in Nigerian Bulk Electric Trading Company and Galaxy Backbone PLC, respectively, did not occur in 2015, but were investments omitted from previous statements, while the investment of 20 billion in Development Bank of Nigeria was as a result of the subscription of rights issue of the Federation. It was unable to produce the share certificates. Committee's recommendation. The Office of Accountant General for the Federation should provide for audit. Limited. The summary of the query is this. Share certificates of all quoted companies ought to have been registered with the Central Securities Clearing System, CSCS, in line with best practices. The non-registration of share certificates of all quoted certificates with CSCS denied the government of the benefits of registration, which, among other things, help to minimize fraudulent practices as regards loss of share certificates. The response that came, the Federation promised to place the investment of federal government in quoted companies with CSCS. Committee observation. The committee observed that the federal government investment are at risk of fraud because the Accountant General of the Federation did not do the needful by providing the evidence of the registration of these shares. Committee recommendation. The committee recommends that 1, all federal government investments should be placed in quoted companies and be registered with CSCS to avoid fraud. And 2, evidence of registration should be forwarded to the Auditor General for the Federation for audit. It should also be forwarded to the committee for its note. Mr. President, I go to the third issue with respect to the financial statement and the record of Federation account. Irregular credit balances of interest with NDAs. Examination of note 47 on that report shows that 2 debit or nil balance. This indicates over-retirement of interest, which is not possible. This is an indication of non-compliance with ETA rules and contrary to section number 1011, 1011, and 1012 of Financial Regulation 2009. The Accountant General from the allocation of such early MDAs for failure to adhere to financial regulations to serve as a deterrent to others. Obtain explanation of National Assembly actual action that has been taken. The response of the agency, there was no response from the Accountant General of the Federation. Committee observation. The 2 MDAs were bereaved for public service reforms and Federal Ministry of Youth Development. No response means acceleration. The committee's recommendation. The committee recommends that all officers involved should be identified and sanctioned in accordance with the provisions of Rule 3124 of Financial Regulation, which states that a public officer who fails to respond to a query issued to him within 21 days for non-retirement of advances or interest shall be surcharged, and the total amount involved be covered from them. The details of the sanctions should be forwarded to the Public Accounts Committee and Auditor General. Then, of course, the fifth query on retired advances in excess of 2.296 billion. Contrary to the provisions of external regulations which require prompt retirement of the advances. The above implies one, there is no 1420. The non-retirement of advances as at when due should be addressed by the Accountant General of the Federation with strict sanctions. The response of these agencies, the Accountant General did not, we state that a public officer, because, Mr. President, this report that is coming from the Public Accounts Committee is a bit novel, and I want to salute the courage and the leadership of you, Mr. President, and this nice Senate, because institutional corruption, this is the committee that is charged with the responsibility of these issues, and we are reporting back corruption. So I want you to be patient with me so that you get this report, and this report is going to serve as a milestone for us. We are involved in one act of corruption, like 5, paragraph 5.22, inconsistent exchange loss difference on external loans, 204.2, General of the Federation, to provide sources of the loss with documentary evidence, provide calculations on how the figures were arrived at, and disclose the source of. There is a gross violation of the financial identified by the Accountant General of the Federation and sanctioned for mismanagement of public funds in accordance with Rule 3115 of the Financial Public Service of the Public Service Rules. Then paragraph 5.31, internal loans made from other funds totaling 390.2 billion naira. The made from special funds in the sum of 390.2 billion was not true position based on withdrawal from development of natural resource fund as loans to various beneficiaries between 2004 and 2015. Contrary to establishment of the fund. The response of the agencies involved, money was taken from special funds, were given to MDAs as loans after due approval from the president. For example, the loan given to INEC was meant for INEC to conduct elections. The president said, please, I want all these ones, January 2015. So this is why we are presenting it as today. Okay. Now, Mr. President, money from special funds were just given out. I know I have to be brief because, Mr. President, you know these reports, the way they are. We are presenting the summary of the query and then, of course, the explanation that was given. Otherwise, the Senate can adopt this report the way it is, and because the part 1 is so voluminous, because it has to do with all the MDAs, maybe the Senate has to adopt a procedure of having to look at this report. Mr. President,
Chairman, please round up this this presentation so that we can make progress.
President, I don't know how really I can sum up. By virtue of the Constitution, Public Accounts Department, committee, is to come up with the recommendation to the Senate. Looking at all these queries one after the other, and we thought we could present them, to the Senate. So if I have to go to the back, which is, a summary of it all these 14 agencies that we have, federal government should bring them to book. The executive arm to bring them to book, because we do not have the power here to a financial statement. The Accountant General will be confronted with these observations. I want to thank the Senate that have been so mentioned in this report. I just believe they should be so penalized. Thank you very much.
Senate Leader.
We have did not even appear before us. Then we now took the NDAs one by one. All the NDAs even include courts, foreign missions. All of them are all here, which of course is the power that is given by the Constitution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, distinguished Chairman, Public Accounts Committee. Senate Leader.
Mr. President, conclude the content of both the first volume and the second volume of this report, of 2015 report. And from what I behind themselves before they stated their findings and recommendations on each case. This matter of and to the people of this country. I think this report is a mine of information on what had happened and what had transpired entrusted to the. This document is a treasure to be adopted with the clerk of the Public Accounts Committee should come with inquiries have been made, so that at a session of this session we will go through each of these recommendations and table it for the approval of members. Going through it like this, in this we will not work. So we need a summary of the recommendations of this committee. These derived by the constitution of this great legislature. Therefore, I commend this document to all the members. Let us go through it so that we can know exactly what is coming up. By that time, a compendium of these recommendations will be worked out by the MDA for the approval of members at a session, that is called during plenary. I so recommend, my President.
Senator
Solomon Olamilekon, Lagos West Senatorial District. Mr. President, let me start by commending the Committee on Public Accounts of the night. One of the cardinal information in that legislative mighty God to chair Senate outcome of working on but the audit 16 and going forward. Of you, three main items that have taken it upon themselves not to even respect the Auditor General's report to the committee without even a look at in trying to make sure that every to spend, it is only right and proper for you to come back and explain how this money has been utilized. And also in his report, he also mentioned that 46 of the agency committee beyond reasonable doubt as to reason why the query raised by the General's office is as a result of this and this. And the report is still continuous. That they are still coming up with a supplementary report for the remaining 59 agencies which query has been sustained and which consider to fight corruption, put up any submission that these 21 agencies appear before the committee and defend their position regarding the expenditure which they have incurred while they are serving in government. And I believe that all other sundry issues that have been raised by the committee, I strongly believe that looking at it one after the other, these are areas in which the committee will continue to work and develop a strategy to ensure that all these sundry issues can be tackled. I strongly believe that the internal control system mechanism should be strengthened at the federal level. It should be strengthened. I agree with them in its entirety because the bulk of these Auditor General queries that we have here was as a result of weaker internal control measures. And I believe the government can put more stringent measures in place, strong internal control measures. At least this query will be reduced drastically than when we have 6-7 volumes. So one area we should also work on, and which I would want the committee to come up with their recommendation, is to ensure how do we strengthen the internal control mechanism of the federal government. When you say they have collected a should come up with in their recommendation so that together we can at least have a government that is working for the people and working for Nigeria. I so submit, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, to add my recovery growth plan. And it is important we give the areas, Mr. President, we spend time to study this report so that we can contribute very meaningfully to the issues raised therein. And once again, I congratulate this committee, and I pray we will do the needful in consideration of this report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Otazi.
Mr. President, I am Senator Chukwuka Otazi, and I represent the good people. Sometimes leads me into temptation. But in today's case, it's not leading me into any temptation. So, Mr. President, I want to just support what my colleagues have said here. You know, as a responsible parliament, it is our duty to ensure that institutions of government are strengthened to perform their responsibility. Such as Public Accounts Committee, the only committee mentioned in the Constitution, standing committee of the Assembly that is mentioned in the Constitution, that will strengthen it to work effectively. We really have to take this job home. This is not a report that we just can come here and take and go. We will take this thing and back and come back at a later date when we are going to look at this thing properly. That is the only way the import of this good job done by this committee will be understood, and ensure compliance by the MDAs that are concerned, so that they understand the finality of this issue. Because Auditor General has done his bit, he reports to the Public Accounts Committee, and then it comes back to the Parliament. And once we finish with the Parliament, that's the end of it. So the finality of all these issues ends with this Parliament. So since it is with us here, please, I'm begging that we will take this and step this thing down, take this work home, study it properly, fix a date that will come, not in a haste. Constitution. I so submit.
Senator Bola Ibn Allah.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues. I have carefully gone through this report, not extensive, but briefly. For the year ended 31st December, commendable, patriotic enough, calls for us first to thank the committee, because it's the first time that we are having this kind of report being submitted to the Senate. I'm inclined to agree with leader. We need a small committee to carefully look at this report, because it's so pregnant. We have seen a lot of things that are scary, where somebody will just take money as huge as 10 billion without following due process and say he's awarding it. I've seen somewhere where 98 million was given for somebody to print leaflets. So if I can suggest, this is one single opportunity that this Senate has, telling you, if we put a committee, will be made by the President. It is worrisome of the law are the ones who are even more immersed in doing it. Now, the moral of it is that if you have a responsibility to check another person, and you are doing worse than what he is doing, and then you are coming to the public to say that you are using the office to which you occupy to bring him to order, this will sound ridiculously rhapsodic. And I think that my own suggestion will be that we constitute a small committee of not more than 5 or 6 people who will go page by page and summarize this content and then present it for the next debate, so that appropriate resolutions will be taken in this chamber. And after taking the resolution, another committee that will publicly ensure the implementation of those recommendations be set up. If we do this, Mr. President, we will have done more than half the fight of fighting corruption in this country. And I'm of the opinion that this is a very commendable job, and I commend the chairman and his committee members for a job well done. Thank you very much.
Senator Boronala, Umbarau Jibrin.
Disturbing aspect that institutions of government, that is dangerous. And I'm trying to condone irresponsibility by people who are charged with responsibility to manage us.
to commend the Senate Committee on Public Accounts, led by no other person but Senator Michael Regis, for a job well done. The report is so self-explanatory, very clear, and it has gone very far to make various observations and recommendations in respect to how where you find infractions in the way this important report, the petroleum sector, where agencies like DPR and PPRA are also part of these. And I want to support the suggestion by the leader that we should be given time to look at this report, because these are far-reaching observations and recommendations. It's an important committee. It has done its job. And the report is very, very clear, self-explanatory. These are talking about infractions running to millions or billions of naira, so that we do not pass judgment on someone that may not be found wanting, or leave that person that may have committed one thing or the other to go scot-free. So it's important we just give a day or two on next sitting, so that we have a very good look at it, so that we do something that nobody will fault at the end of the day. I so submit this.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Let me join the leader and all our colleagues who have contributed to this debate on the report of our Committee on Public Accounts. I want to also say that the committee has done a very good job of scrutiny and, of course, and I want to say that was the first committee ever to be established given to public servants or civil. So this is one of whoever is given must be who failed the invitation letters would remind us. This Senate will publish the names of that is given the public should have no business at all accountable. Then that person or explain the interrogation was not right or not. They appeared responsible and accountable. For those that have been able to convince the committee on the propriety, and from my experience as Chairman of Public Accounting matter. So the accounting systems established in NERA on what they call welfare to stop this kind of thing. So they follow, and it needs our study to look at the recommendations, all the recommendations, so that when we come, because it's the recommendations that we consider, instead of going through all the documents before we pass recommendations. The Office of the Auditor General has for a very long time been undermined by the system. We have worked up, and we should continue to do that, because like most of our distinguished colleagues said, if you are fighting corruption, the Office of the Auditor General is one avenue through which you can stop a lot of things from happening. Though that has not happened, but we have moved away from at least where we found the Office of the Auditor General then. So we will continue to support that office. And this administration, at the risk of sounding of anti-corruption, of fighting insecurity, and revitalizing and reviving the economy of this country. So corruption, your responsibility. So with this, we don't have to set up any committee, ad hoc committee or small committee. This is entirely yours. You are the queen of committees, really. So you do your summary, and then we reschedule this thing for consideration by the Senate. Thank you very much. So we are not going to continue with both report 1 and 2. Just do the summaries, and then we reschedule it for discussions.
Good colleagues. A petition from Mr. E.C. Igwe, Esquire, on behalf of employees of Transport and Port Management System of Nigeria Limited against the Nigerian Shippers Council and Transport and Port Management System of Nigeria Limited for alleged non-payment of salaries. B. Petition from Usman Hamza, offered by 35,894,799.95 naira and two others on behalf of 40 other disengaged staff of the Council of the Conoil PLC against Conoil PLC for non-payment of their final entitlements after Christian Church of God RCCG against Cartel Construzioni Nigeria Limited for unjustly claiming the sum of 151,508,901.22 naira as reimbursement for rehabilitation of Ifewara Road, Osun State, which was actually rehabilitated by Redeemed Christian Church of God. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the distinguished Senator Patrick Ayo Akinyelure to move the motion for the Senate to receive and consider the reports of the committee.
Distinguished Senator Patrick Ayo Akinyelure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleagues. My name remains Senator Ayo Akinyelure, representing Ondo Central. Mr. President, I rise to move that the Senate do receive on behalf of employees of Transport and Port Management System of Nigeria Limited against the Nigerian Shippers Council and Transport and Port Management System of Nigeria Limited for alleged non-payment of salaries. B. Petition from Usman Hamza Kebai against Trust Fund Pension PLC for alleged persistent refusal to pay agreed agency fees in the sum of 35.8 million on the rollover of pension account for 5 organizations. C. Petition from V. Oladapo and 2 others of their final entitlement on behalf of Redeemed Christian Church of God (RCCG) against Kati Concerning Nigeria Limited for unjustly claiming the sum of 151.8 million as reimbursement from the rehabilitation of Ifewara Road, Osun State, which was actually rehabilitated by the Redeemed Christian Church of God. Mr. President, I so move for receive and consideration by the Senate. I so move.
Distinguished Senator I.D. Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remain Senator I.D. Young from Plateau North. Petitions that have been read out be considered. I so second. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the reports as read out by the Chairman, Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Chairman, you may lay the reports, please. Put one after the other.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name remains Senator Ayo Akinyelure, representing Ondo Central. Mr. President, report of Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petition in respect of petition of E.C. Igwe Esquire on behalf of employees of Transport and Port Management System of Nigeria Limited against the Nigerian Shippers Council and Transport and Port Management System of Nigeria for alleged non-payment of salary. Mr. President, I go straight to the findings and recommendations of the committee. On page 6, observations and findings. After studying the presentation and submission of the petitioner, respondent and CEO, Nigerian Shippers Council was reluctant to get directly involved as the Nigerian petition very difficult for the committee. 2, that after waiting unsuccessfully for Executive Secretary or CEO to appear after 3 invitations, and also because the committee could not see any reason why the workers of TPMS Limited should not be paid, decided that TPMS employees be paid their salaries without further delay. 3, that though the general claim from Nigerian Shippers Council was that 100% of the revenue collected by TPMS was transferred to Treasury single account of the federal government. Hence, its inability to pay TPMS to enable it to corner its financial obligation of salary payment to its employees over the years. The committee believes that the onus of payment of services rendered was on Shippers Council based on agreement reached before commencement of activities of revenue generation for Nigerian Shippers Council. And 4, that because Nigerian Shippers Council was unable to provide evidence that TPM was owing it and any sum. The findings above, Mr. President, committee hereby recommend as follows. 1, that the Senate do urge Nigerian Shippers Council to find a way through the Accountant General of the Federation to access the TSA account of its agency and honor the payment of outstanding 40% of total revenue generated by TPMS to enable it pay all outstanding salaries due to its workforce since December 2016 till the expiration of judgment necessary for the opportunity.
Any comments? Otherwise,
Colleagues, Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, Niger North. Mr. President, I want to commend the chairman and his members. And my concern is that if truly what they have found is correct, then we should look at a way to resolve that issue in a manner that at the end of the day, those at the receiving end can be guaranteed. That is the concern I have, and perhaps maybe when we look at the recommendation they've made, we may interrogate whether that recommendation will do that I've said.
Senator Chukwuka Utazi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to say, Mr. President, that I'm a member of the committee, but there is an oversight. I have an additional recommendation to this issue. And
recommendation. Why didn't you this document? Are you amending this one or you are bringing a new one? Okay, when we do the recommendations, then you can bring the new one. No. When we take the recommendations, then you can bring it. Because it's an additional recommendation. Of course, Senator Chukwuka Utazi has an additional recommendation he wants to make. So I'll put the question on the recommendation by the committee. That the Senate do urge the Nigerian Shippers Council to find a way through the Accountant General of the Federation to access the TSA office by TPMS to enable it pay all outstanding salaries due to its workforce since December 2016 till the expiration of their contract. Yes? Yeah, amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Aliu Sabi Abdullahi once again. Mr. President, my amendment will be that we urge the Accountant General of the Federation to allow Nigerian Shippers Council to assess the TSA of his agency, and then the other sentence go. Because if we say should find a way, they will find it very difficult. And I think the TSA is under the control of the Accountant General, and if we believe what was done was wrong and we want to right, then it is the Accountant General that we should be urging to allow Shippers Council to have access to that particular money.
Okay, seconder, please. Any seconder? Senator Barrow Jibrin.
I stand to second the amendment sought by Senator Saidi Abdullahi.
Okay, distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the recommendation as amended, say aye. Those against, say nay. There is an additional recommendation, Senator Utazi.
thank you, Mr. President. To make it clearer, the revenue generated by TPMS Limited and paid into the TSA, compute the 40% due to TPMS and make payments accordingly. I shall submit.
Any seconder to that recommendation? Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, I'm Yahya Abdullahi representing Kebino. I rise to second the motion, the additional recommendation raised by Senator Utazi.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the additional recommendation, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Chairman, next report.
In respect of petition from Usman Hamza K. Bai against Trust Fund Pension PLC for alleged persistent refusal to pay agreed agency fees in the sum of 35.8 million on the rollover of pension account from 5 organizations. Mr. President, I go straight to the recommendation of the findings and recommendation of the committee. Findings on page number 6. After carefully studying the written and oral presentation of both petitioner and respondent, the committee came to the following findings. 1, that the real bone of contention between Hamza Usman Kebai and Trust Fund PLC was clause 5.1.2 of the expired MOU they signed in 2016. In that clause, the MOU did not say whether or not, in clear terms, that there will be a yearly 5%, 50% rollover management fee in favor of Hamza Usman Kebai for every pension account secured by him on behalf of the Trust Fund Pension PSC. 2, that over this one-off agency fee due for every pension account is secured in favor of Trust Fund Pension, there was to be a yearly 50% rollover management fee for all accounts he secured, a claim that Trust Fund Pension PSC vehemently denied. 3, that to avoid the unending error, instead of 35.8 million, which he claimed he earned from the yearly rollover of the management fee for all 5 agencies from whom he secured pension account on behalf of Trust Fund Pension PSC. And finally, Mr. President, that the matter was eventually resolved by the committee in that way, and both parties agreed to the terms suggested by the committee in a memorandum of understanding executed to that effect. And based on that, Hamza Usman Kabai was paid 20 million as compensation in order to end the EU's raise permanently. Recommendations. Based on the findings above, the committee recommends as follows: that Trust Fund Pension PSC, the respondent, and Hamza Usman Kebai, the petitioner, be commended for their maturity in agreeing to the terms of settlement proposed by the committee for amicable resolution of the EU's permanently. And 2, that the Senate do specially commend the management of Trust Fund Pension PSC for display of professional maturity and integrity to make the 20 million final settlement available to the pensioner within 1 week, agreed between the parties in a memorandum of understanding executed to end the dispute. That both pensioner and respondent should go ahead and do their own business the way that suits them best in the open market. I so move, Mr. President.
That maturity in agreeing to the terms, those against any, the ayes have it. Well, the second recommendation is like also commending, but we have already commended the trust fund itself. Do we need to commend them again? Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Why I said we should comment, why the committee resolved to commend the pension period.
The first recommendation is like commending them for the maturity in agreeing to the terms of settlement proposed by the committee for amicable resolution. So, what the second one is just an outcome of that.
That the Senate do especially recommend this one, and then also taking the 20 million. Finish. And then the other one should be.
Well, Chairman, you have listened to Senator Gobe. Do you think the same? Okay, maybe we delete the second one because the first one covers everything. This is just part of the details. But if you insist, I'll put the question.
Mr. President, I will agree to the submission. The only thing is just to commend them because there are many people, when they make promises, they
we'll do so if that will make them happier. This thing. That's one. It's all right. I'll read it. The Senate do specially commend the management of Trust Fund Pensions PLC. I hope we are not advertising million naira final settlement available to the petitioner within 1 week, agreed between the parties in a memorandum of understanding executed to end the dispute. That both petitioner and respondent should go ahead and do their own business the way that suits them best in the open market. Those in favor of this recommendation say aye.
Colleagues, the third report is the report of the Committee on Ethics, Privilege and Public Petitions in respect of petition from VA Oladapo and 2 others on behalf of 40 other disengaged staff of Kono PLC for non-payment of their final entitlement after being disengaged from the service of the company. After hearing from both the Oladapo and Kono were disengaged from the petitioners were disengaged from the service of Kono PLC between 2019 and February 2020 had not been paid their final entitlement by the company after disengagement. 2. The Corn Oil PLC collaborated the pensioners' claim that they had not been paid, but stated that the delay in payment was as a result of outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 that caused records of financial losses by most petroleum marketing companies, Corn Oil includes. Petitioners for final payment within the month of March 2021. Commend Corn Oil PLC for being with that the Senate do commend the petitioner for not resorting to violence while trying to fight for the payment of their delayed entitlement from Corn PLC. Conclusion, Mr. President, most of colleagues, on behalf of this committee, appreciate the Senate President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Any comments? We'll go to the recommendations, distinguished colleagues. Recommendation 1, that the Senate do commend Corn Oil PLC for being willing to alleviate the plight of the petitioners by agreeing to pay them their final entitlements after disengagement. Those in favor of this recommendation say aye. The DSP.
Thank you, Mr. President of the Omo Agege Delta Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, I recall in the 8th Senate we had something similar like this, and the mistake we made at the time that there was no time setting, that was included, for the performance by Corn Oil. So I'm going to plead that we amend this by putting a time frame within which the performance of this agreement to pay is executed. So I will suggest that the payment be made to them within a period of 90 days. So it will now read that the Senate do commend Corn Oil PLC 90 days. I so move.
The DSP, before I call for someone to second it, if there was an agreement, and you are the lawyer, if there was an agreement between Corn Oil PLC and the petitioners, and in that the agreement they didn't say 90 days, can we here say it's an agreement between them, or we are asking or urging or directing Corn Oil? Because maybe they didn't agree to 90 days. It could be less.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is not an agreement. It is the decision that was made by the committee. He said they are willing. That's what they said. But Mr. President, speaking from experience as a member of the committee on ethics and privileges, in the 8th Senate I was a member, and this same company, these same circumstances we just dealt with here right now also came before us, and it took over a year and a half, Mr. President, before, in fact, even those that the committee permitted or ruled in their favor, Mr. President, they now became at the mercy of Corn Oil. So be it, but there should be a time setting.
Funding the amendments sought by the DSP, I would also want to make some contribution on recommendation 1. And so, Mr. President, I'm Dr. Gabriel Suswam, Benue Northeast. I rise to second the amendment sought by the DSP.
Now, we are at the stage of voting on recommendations. We have passed that one. Okay, go ahead.
I think recommendation 1 should be totally amended. If
say it should be proper.
If it is the responsibility of Corn Oil to pay people their entitlement, I don't see why we should be commending them for doing that. Mr. President, they have a responsibility to so do, and so why should we commend them? Which one? Which one?
Senator Susan, go ahead. Continue, please.
Before you were distracted, I was saying that Corn Oil has a responsibility to pay these people. And so I don't see any reason why the Senate should commend them for fulfilling their own responsibility. What this should read is, people, not to commend them. Why should we commend them for doing what they're supposed to do? That is my own take on that.
So I have two issues to deal with. First, I have to put the amendment, to put question on the amendment that was proposed by the DSP and seconded by you, and then you can do your own amendment on the amended recommendation. So I will put the question on the amendment being sought by the DSP. Those in favor of recommendation 1 as amended, say aye. Those, maybe you don't have who.
That this Senate
address the chair, please.
based on the amendments that have seconded by the DSP, which he was seeking for 90 days, I think I want to align myself with that.
We'll go to recommendation 2, that the Senate do also commend the petitioners for not resorting to violence while trying to fight for the payment of their delayed entitlements for doing the right thing. Okay, go ahead.
Well, Mr. President, you see, because of my experience in this particular committee, most of these organizations, when they agree to do certain things, those who have actually willingly.
Okay. Yes, Senator Swam.
Mr. President, I was going to bring an additional recommendation. Add that the Senate do write the management of corn oil to forward to the committee evidence of compliance with the resolution which we've taken here. Because if they don't do that, like the DSP did say, you know, it might be open-ended. And so let them, once they comply, write to the committee showing evidence of compliance so that we can monitor it.
Well, let me say that administratively, the committee is supposed to convey, or the Senate is supposed to convey this resolution to corn oil and the petitioners as well, because that was, and we expect them to comply as appropriately. Do we need to put it in the resolution? Okay, I need a seconder. Seconded by DSP. This recommendation has a heavy thing. Chairman of Power, and then the DSP. Chairman, next report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, on behalf of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, RCG, against Katir concerning Nigeria Limited for unjustly claiming the sum of 151.5 million as reimbursement for the rehabilitation of Ife-Wara Road, Osun State, which was actually rehabilitated by the Redeemed Christian Church of God. Mr. President, after receiving submission from both respondents and petitioners, the committee came out with the following findings and recommendations. Recommendations on page 8, page 8, 5.0. Observations and findings. After carefully studying the oral and written submission of the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing, Pastor Niyi Adebanjo of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, and Max Aga Esquire of Katir concerning Nigeria Limited, the committee observes as follows: that the 15-kilometer Ife-Wara Road was not a federal road, but a state road within Osun State in southwest Nigeria. 2, that the rehabilitation of the road was awarded by the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing to Kali Construction Nigeria Limited in 2010 because the project was a zonal intervention project of a former member of National Assembly domiciled in the ministry's budget. 3, that the commencement date of the contract was 7 March 2011 with a completion date of 7 November 2011. 4, that the consequent upon the advance payment guarantee, APG, provided by the contractor, Kali Construction Nigeria Limited, was paid the first interim statement in the sum of 99.4 million naira, and the second interim statement was 52.1 million, which were paid on 31st March and stopped further work on the project. That after several warnings to the contractor on his dismal performance up to June 2015, when it was given final warning, there was no further payment made to the contractor after the last payment in 2011, and the contract has not been formally terminated. See, that the Ife-Wara Committee beacon on RCG to intervene in the rehabilitation of the road, and the church graciously rehabilitated the road between 2016 and 2019. as part of his contribution to the development of State and Nigeria, and expended the sum of 188.4 million naira for the rehabilitation of Ife-Ife Road. Two, there was not paid any further claim by the Federal Ministry of Works between 2016 and 2019, as claimed by RCG, after it was paid 99.4 million for the first and 52.1 million for the second interim statement in March. We commend the Redeemed Christian Church of God, RCG, for alleviating the suffering of Ife-Ife community by rehabilitating Ife-Ife Road in Osun State, Nigeria. Two, that the Senate to urge the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing to formally terminate the contract for the rehabilitation. Also recover the sum of 145 million, being total amount released to the contractor for rehabilitation of the road before for rehabilitating the Ife-Ife Road in need for consideration, Mr. President. Thank you.
Any comments? We'll go to the recommendations. That the Senate do commend the Redeemed Christian Church of God, RCCG, for alleviating the suffering of Ife-Ife community by rehabilitating the Ife-Ife Road in Osun State of Nigeria. Those in favor of this, to formally terminate the contract for the rehabilitation of the Ife-Ife Road in Osun State, awarded to Cartel Costrazioni Nigeria Limited in 2010 and abandoned by the contractor since 2011, and also recover the sum of 140 million naira being total amount released to the contractor for the rehabilitation of the road before it abandoned the project. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. And three, that the Senate do urge the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing not to make any refund to the Redeemed Christian Church of God, RCCG, for state. Those in favor of this recommendation say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues,
Leader, we're waiting.
Mr. President, I'm very sorry. Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fifth order of the day, the second reading of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2021, SB 754. Distinguished senators will recall that the request of Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief was read yesterday, 22nd June 2021. Mr. President, with your permission, I move that the bill be read the second time.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion.
Just go ahead.
Mr. President, my highly respected and esteemed colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on this very important bill, which seeks to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation, a total sum of 895 million 842 million 465,917 million 17,000 naira 917 naira only, of which 173 billion 444 expenditure, while the same 1,253 naira is for contribution to the Development Fund of Capital Expenditure for the year ending 31st May 2021, 31st December 2021. Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, you will recall that the President Commander-in-Chief, through a communication to the President of the Senate, forwarded the 2021 Supplementary Appropriation Bill to the Senate, which was read on this floor of the Senate on Tuesday, 22nd June 2021, which was yesterday. The bill is deemed to have been read the first time by virtue of that letter. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the 2021 supplementary budget is needed to fund defense, security, and health-related expenditure and for treatment of additional 50,000 patients under the Nigerian Comprehensive Aid Program in states, which is to procure additional equipment captured in this year's capital expenditure on defense and security to procure additional equipment. The defense and security component of the bill is to procure additional equipment captured in this year's capital expenditure on defense and security to tackle the prevalence of defense and security related challenges that face this country. Considering the state of security in the country, and law and order and security institutions and agencies urgently need to procure additional equipment and other resources in response to the prevalent security challenges facing the country. Similarly, the 2021 Supplementary Appropriation Bill takes provision for procurement and administration of COVID-19 vaccines, whose terms were still uncertain at the time of finalizing the 2021 budget. Under the vaccine program developed by the Ministry of Health and National Primary Health Care Agency, it is expected that 70% of eligible Nigerians are to be vaccinated between 2021 and 2022. In order to address the urgent problem of oxygen-related availability in the country nationwide and repair existing plants in FCT hospitals. Mr. President, considering the state of insecurity in our country, our security and law and order institutions and agencies urgently need to consider additional achievements as well. As a step in addressing the lingering labor crisis in the health sector of this country, the 2021 Supplementary Appropriation Bill proposes additional funds for public service, if not resolved, can add to the prevalent sense of instability in the polity. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the supplementary budget of 42,465,917 naira only. The federal government in this 83.56 billion required for the COVID vaccine program by drawing on existing World Bank loans, which would be restructured, of 37.93 billion required for COVID-19 vaccines, salaries, and other related totaling of the defense security expenditure. Supplementary appropriation proposes to fund the balance of 722.40 billion for capital expenditure on defense and security and capital supplementation from new borrowings in the absence of any supplementary revenue sources. Despite the needs of other sectors, the supplementary budget proposal is limited to just these critical emergency areas and emergency areas of need due to our severe fiscal constraints as a country. Mr. President, my highest priority has been a challenge. A key step has been for all the adult population to receive its first dose of the vaccine, while the second round of the vaccination has already commenced, and with this supplementary appropriation, we hope we will get it right. Finally, most of the country, I therefore urge our colleagues to support the second reading of this bill for further legislative action. I so propose.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, I think the issue at stake is quite very clear. They are not contentious. Two key issues: the topical issue of security challenge in our country, which of the novel corona budget supplementation.
Mr. President, I rise to number one. The country is in
severe distress as far as security situation is concerned. Virtually all the geopolitical zones are having one security challenge or the other. And the intervention of the federal government at this critical time is very timely. And I support the amount to be appropriated on security. And equally important is the COVID-19 pandemic we have. The pandemic is still around. Vaccination is below 4% based on what we had. And it is good that within the country, if you are not vaccinated, you will not be allowed to board any aircraft in the next 6 months based on the information we are getting. So it is important that we support the second reading of this supplementary appropriation bill, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you very much.
Senator Solomon Adiola Olamilekon.
Thank you, Mr. President, very distinguished colleague. Mr. President, let me also join my colleague in commending the effort of President Muhammad Buhari for coming up with this supplementary budget at this point in time. As we are all aware, that there are two major issues currently confronting us as a nation, and one of which also confronting us globally. The first is the issue of the insecurity. And you quite agree with us that there is need for proper funding of all our security apparatus for us to be able to confront these security challenges. And secondly, the issue of global pandemic. The whole world is involved in this. Nigeria cannot be left behind. And there is need for Nigerians to be vaccinated. And don't forget that there are new variants in town. The Delta variant is there, the British variant is there.
The DSP is protesting.
And if you look at the structure of the financing of the supplementary budget, it is explicit enough. The only borrowing element of this 800, more than 75% of this supplementary budget is for capital expenditure, which is committed to our national security. And the borrowing plan to do this is just 715 billion, which is still within the threshold of 3% as contained in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And the government has put in place other sources of augmenting, like the issue of issuance of about 105 from special account, and also special levy, issuance application of this fund. We will be able to supplementary budget that we are considering now. It is not out of place. It is just in preparation and also preparing us to ensure that issues confronting us as a nation is adequately attended to. So, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I implore all my colleagues to also join us to support this supplementary budget, and so that we can pass it with a speed of time, and so that the president can go to work regarding the security and also vaccination of our people. Thank you, Assessor.
Thank you. Senator Kabir Abdullah Barkia.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, and Senator Kabir Abdullahi, representing Katsina Central. Mr. President, if we look at this supplementary budget proposal, we see that, of course, two important aspects for the budget. That's the COVID-19 and also the security issue. Mr. President, I could recall, before we went on this 1 week break, we discussed issue of security here. Of almost all 30%, I mean 70% of our colleagues contributed. So since we have this opportunity, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I think I could go in my contribution, I made mention that 2018. So now that we have this proposal again, I think it's very, very important if this chamber will make sure that at least substantial amount of this supplementary provision go to this ammunition. Because definitely our militaries and also the police and everybody are lacking this important aspect of the security aspect of this nation. So definitely we have to look at it. And also the same thing, recruitment. Because we made mention that yes, both the police and military are yet to recruit enough number of the military that we wanted to put in this under security issues. So we can make provision at least from this proposal that yes, but this arms ammunition and also recruitment. So that definitely things will improve. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and distinguished colleagues.
Distinguished Senator Siraki Dixon, Bayelsa West.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues. I'm Henry Siraki Dixon, representing Bayelsa West. I just want to observe firstly that this supplementary budget deserves the support of all. A part of it also is going to deal with the worldwide menace, the epidemic of COVID-19. And similarly, it deserves. Bayelsa had only one senator in this chamber when the current budget was discussed, deliberated upon, and passed. But nevertheless, the senator who was here was strong enough to carry the entire burden of the state with your support. And this chamber performed its role in legislating for the whole country. But let me just put it on notice that 2/3 of Bayelsa was not part of that. And I thought that in this supplementary appropriation, that some issues that are germane to the stability and security of that scene, that it is only limited in a way, just direct appropriation to support the security services. The other point I wanted, therefore, in that connection to make is that there appears to be no special regard paid to supporting the security services that are stabilizing the region that produces the resources that keeps this country going. We are happy that there is relative stability there as a result of it. Over-concentrate. What affects a part affects the whole. Now that we have some stability there, I thought that we should also draw what we did, building facilities for the Navy, building facilities for the Army, establishing a base for them, and so on and so forth. So if I had the opportunity, I would have said this budget, supplementary budget, should also have some provisions dealing with support for the police, dealing with support for some of the services on matters that have to do with stability, security, and health and well-being. There is no by all. Finally, just to say that having brought this to Mr. Senate President's attention, I hope that when it gets to your kingdom, when we will be dealing with the main appropriation bill for next year, that some of the issues that I'm raising will be brought to the Senate President's attention, and at that time, we hope to get some support so that some of the things that cannot go in now to support the security services in the Niger Delta and Bayelsa will be captured at that time. Thank you very much.
Senator Adigian.
Thank you, Mr. President. I remain Senator Adigian, representing the blessed people of Plateau North. Mr. President, I rise to support this supplementary budget that has been brought to the Senate by Mr. President, and particularly to align myself very strongly with the provision that has been made to strengthen the fight against insecurity. Mr. President, there's a scripture that says that no soldier goes to war at his own expense. It therefore means that in equipping successfully effectively and efficaciously the insecurity challenge that we are facing. The two components, the human component and of course the equipment component, has to be addressed. And this supplementary budget is making provision to equip the security agencies, particularly the military.
Distinguished colleague, you need to round up because we have to close by 2. We have no extended time, so there are few.
So that the military against terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, and all other criminalities that we are facing in the nation. Thank you.
Senator Suswam.
Yeah, Mr. President, Dr. Suswam, Benue Northeast. Mr. President, why important for us to advert the minds of senators and Nigerians to the general macro and microeconomic issues that will arise from the budget. Mr. President, yes, there's a need for the government to seriously pay attention to insecurity. You have a budget of 860, Mr. President. That is bad budgeting. Mr. President, if we have a budget of 894 billion, and then you have a revenue inflow of 135 billion, and then you are experiencing a deficit of 760 billion in a budget. Mr. President, I don't think that while addressing a problem, you are creating numerous more problems than the one you seek to address. I said this because you look at the financing item of the budget. Mr. President, the financing item of the budget are from borrowing. In the main budget, we have a very high deficit level, which of course have affected the macroeconomic management. We are having inflation. Nobody knows how this inflation are coming. And so we must be of quantitative easing, which is what I think is going to happen here. The Committee on Finance have, in their investigation, recovered money from ministries and departments of over 1 trillion. And so I do not see how, if we recover that money, we are going to borrow when we know that this borrowing adds to the deficit of the country. And so, Mr. President, while we agree totally that there's a need for Mr. President to fight insurgency, terrorism, and all of that, we should also be mindful of the rate, which has brought about inflation in the country. And so if we have 135 billion revenue inflow, and you have a budget of 890 something, with a deficit of 760, Mr. President, that is bad budgeting. And this Senate should advert the minds of Nigerians that yes, we agree that this supplementary budget will pass, but the people who are responsible for this budgeting should think deeper. Like I said, Mr. President, because you were being distracted, the Committee on Finance have recovered over 1 trillion naira from ministries and departments. So why are we borrowing 800 and something and then adding to the deficit, which we already have over 5 trillion deficit? Because this will add to the deficit. What in turns this means is that in 2022 budget, we have a deficit of over 10 trillion. And that means that ab initio, you don't have a budget. So my worry is that let the Minister of Finance seek the money that has been recovered by the Committee on Finance, which was announced by my chairman, a public account, other than going to borrow this money and add to the deficit of the country, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Senator Ibrahim Gobir. But you have only 1.5 minutes because we have to close before 2, or just by 2.
Okay. You see, particularly if you look at the issue of security, the budget is steered for security and we support it. But of course, there are some areas that we believe that other things should have been looked at carefully. If you look at the Office of the National Security Advisor, because of the counter-terrorism center that is currently under construction, I think we will try to look at that, and then the issue of this unmanned drones, and then also the trackers, because by the time we do that,
I think we should be able to track all those bandits that are very close around. So I think
Okay, finally, Deputy Chief Whip.
There is need for us to also look at Nigerians who are victims of all these, criminalities, insurgencies, and bandits, so that they are stable and that of all this banditry.
Thank you. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, of 895 billion naira only, of more than 644, 720, 253 naira only is for contribution to the development fund for capital expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of December 2021. SB.
The Federation, the total sum of 895,842,465,917 naira only, of which 173,444,506,664 naira only is for current non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 722,396,000,000 fund for capital expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of December 2021, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Appropriations to report back Tuesday next week. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Leader of the Senate.
Termination of our day's proceedings, I would like to move a motion for this distinguished Senate to suspend consideration of all other items on our today's order paper to another legislative.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion as moved.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that we stand down to consideration of the remaining items on the order paper till another legislative, they say aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Are we coming tomorrow? Distinguished colleagues, I rise to move a motion for the Senate to adjourn proceedings until Tuesday next week. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I second the motion.
Ifeanyi Uba, Anambra South Senatorial District, Federal Republic of Nigeria, notification of my candidature and request for prayers and support. With the best regards and due recourse to your distinguished office, I write to express my sincere appreciation to you and my distinguished colleagues for according me a cordial relationship in the course of my stay so far in the National Senate, despite being the only senator under the aegis of the Young Progressive Party, YPP. Words cannot express the depth of my gratitude. I have successfully emerged as the gubernatorial candidate of the Young Progressive Party, YPP, for the forthcoming governorship elections in Anambra State slated for November 6, 2021. As indicated in my earlier letter to you and in view of the above, I wish to request that you, as well as my distinguished colleagues, put me in your earnest prayers as I humbly solicit for your staunch support to vie for the position of Governor Anambra State. While counting on your fervent prayers and staunch support, please accept the assurance of my distinguished regards. Yours faithfully, Senator Dr. Ifeanyi Uba, Anambra South Senatorial District. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. The Senate, those in favor of the motion that the Senate do adjourn to Tuesday next week at